In my last video about tokipona, I spent a lot of time complaining about the exact logic that leads people to assume that tokipona is easy. This logic upsets me because I believe tokipona to be difficult, and I believe that the concept that tokipona is easy implies that it isn't capable of things that I and people I know have used it for. I really like the design of tokipona. The lexicon comes together really well in practice. The grammar is sufficient and fluid. And even with such a small vocabulary, you can talk about anything, which in linguistics is called productivity, of banana lang fame. And Hocket fame too, of course. But that's only true if you're exceptionally proficient. While you're learning, and even years after you think you're done learning, you will struggle with all three of these things. Even if you tell yourself you aren't struggling, you are, and you're lying to yourself, because tokipona is like really hard. Is it harder than other languages? I think it depends on the person and circumstance, but it would be false to claim that it is never harder. It took me a few years to get conversationally proficient. This was due to my own lack of diligence as a learner, but it's interesting to me that I was able to get conversationally proficient in Portuguese in less time. For me, tokipona was harder than Portuguese. There were many factors that went into that, including learning environment, my own maturity, the frequency at which I took my ADHD medication, a pandemic, social anxiety, I could go on and on. But in the end, tokipona was harder for me. There is one thing that is way easier about tokipona though. Tokipona only has like 120 words. Just memorize them and what they mean. Read my semantic spaces dictionary and you'll get a better feel for them. It may be slightly out of date, I don't know, but like if you read it, you'll understand enough nuance about them to decipher their meanings in context. Basically everything else is hard though. It's not just word order. Words change meaning depending on where they show up, in ways that seem unpredictable. Many particles have no clear one-to-one analog with a learner's first language. Many concepts seem missing at first, which is why so many learners come up with new words to fill those gaps. But most importantly, the way tokipona talks about specific concepts is really hard. Really hard! To learn why, let's learn a bit about linguistics. In linguistics, there's a concept called ambiguity. This refers to the phenomenon that a word or phrase can have more than one meaning. For example, the robbers and the rowers both ran from banks. This is called a zeugma test, and it works because each meaning of bank here is a separate sense. The robbers ran from a money bank and the rowers ran from a riverbank. Ambiguity tests are used in dictionary making to determine how many entries each word needs. Languages employ a few tactics to resolve ambiguity, which is called disambiguation. Ambiguity can be resolved lexically. The lexicon is all of the words in a language. But first we gotta look at levels of categorization. To simplify a little bit, let's say we have big words and little words. Big words are not very specific and therefore can refer to lots of things. Some examples are bird and cloth. Little words are very specific and therefore can refer to fewer things. In reality, this is a spectrum with thing on one end, something that can be used to describe all possible objects in the universe, and cloud the cat at the other end, a proper noun that can only refer to this cat right here. The broad categories are called superordinate, the medium categories are called basic, and the super-specific categories are called subordinate. Psychologists suggest that the words people typically go for in day-to-day conversation are around the basic range of specificity. I've linked to a video below that goes into depth that you should absolutely watch in full, but here are the pieces of evidence that Dr. Maggie Schifrar outlines in her video. First, the basic level is the level where the outlines of objects have some level of similarity. Second, when babies first acquire language, the words they use are in the basic category. Third, when we learn languages as adults, we typically latch onto words from the basic category faster. Fourth, the reaction time for words in the basic category is the fastest. For the purposes of this video, even if this only applies to English, which it probably doesn't anyway, it's still relevant. The point is that if I want to specify book further, for whatever reason, I can replace it with a more specific word like dictionary or grammar. And this is a form of disambiguation. So you may have noticed that tokipona completely lacks basic category words. All words in tokipona are superordinate, meaning that they are more general. This means that cognitively, at least Anglophone tokipona speakers, and probably everyone else too, struggle more to use tokipona because its lexicon is not as compatible with the way human brains process information. There, a concrete way in which tokipona is more difficult to use than other languages. Now I want you to remember this. One way to disambiguate an ambiguous sentence is to use a more specific word. Here, it's a pin. I want you to take this pin, and put it in that. Put a pin in that. Thank you. The next method is by using context, and I'm going to actually describe what that means. Context is the stuff around the sentence. Let's break that down further. 1. Prior knowledge. Everyone holds knowledge in their brains. Everyone has experiences. While communicating, if both parties involved have a shared experience, say having sailed before, they can call upon that shared experience to help disambiguate. If I say, I tighten the line, I don't need to disambiguate line between its many possible meanings if we have gone sailing together before. I know that you'll know it's this specialized meaning. Actually, boat linguistics is really interesting. Maybe I'll make a video on that one day. But anyway, 2. Presupposition. This one is hard for people to wrap their heads around, in my experience. I checked out a book on linguistic pragmatics and went out to pizza with a friend who was interested in linguistics and tried to explain what presupposition was from the textbook. And it was a challenge. A couple of years later, they described their current understanding as vague. But I'll break it down for you. Every time we say a sentence, there are assumptions we can make if we assume the sentence is true. For example, if I say, I ran out of honey for the roof, we can presuppose a lot of things. Let's list them off. I had honey before, I used all the honey I had, I want or need more honey, I have a roof, I'm using the honey for something on the roof, I'm expecting the person I'm listening to be well enough acquainted with my roof honey shenanigans to not have to elaborate on them further. And I have some sort of method for getting honey on top or close to the roof. See how much information we can get out of just one sentence? All of this is context, and we process this information without thinking too hard about it every single time someone says a sentence, even if we have zero prior knowledge. Third, situational context. This is the stuff you can see around you. If it's Thanksgiving in the South, can you get me some dressing probably means, can you go get me some bread pudding with turkey drippings? But if we're at a salad bar, it probably means, can you get me some emulsified oil to put in my collection of bite-sized food pieces? And if we're high and also at a clothing store, it may even mean, can you go get me some clothes? Back to the bank example from before, if I say, I just got to the bank, if we live in a forest off-grid, it's probably the riverbank. If we live in the middle of New York City, it's probably a money bank. There's a lot of stuff around you that you can use when forming sentences, and paying attention to what the other person is paying attention to is also important. There's no such thing as a sentence truly without context. And 4, you can make your own context. Just say more sentences. I do this in English all the time. Like perhaps I'm talking to a friend who got reprimanded at work, but also takes things pretty literally. And I want to be clear about what I mean, so I say, I love that for you. And by love that, I'm being sarcastic, and I actually hate that for you. The second sentence is my own context that I just inserted. Maybe I'm telling a story about my uncle, and I say, for reference, this is one of my 2 uncles that lives in New Zealand, specifically the one who plays piano and lives with his lovely husband. Not one of my other 2 uncles, or my aunt's boyfriend. There we go, I just disambiguated by adding my own context. Remember that pin I gave you? Let's get ourselves sorted really quickly. The first method of disambiguation used in language is searching the lexicon for a more specific word. The second method is by using context, which can look like a lot of different things. In English, speakers make great use of both of these methods. Toki pona lacks a robust enough lexicon for the first method to be effective outside of a couple of edge cases. The goal of the lexicon method is to bring the level of categorization down to basic or below, and toki pona lacks words beyond the superordinate level. The good news I have for you is that the second method, using context, still works perfectly. That's why I am confident that, even with a smaller lexicon, toki pona can still disambiguate to the same level that any other language can. And with enough skill, it really isn't that cumbersome. But getting to that skill level takes a while. If you think it's impossible, you're probably just not there yet. Am I there yet? I'm not sure. I've discussed plenty of difficult context, but every time I have, I've struggled at least a little bit. Am I fluent? I don't know. I think that label is useless to use within toki pona spaces. Am I competent in like every situation one could be when using toki pona? Yes, I would say so. So when the ghost of my great-grandmother Golda asks me if I'm fluent in toki pona, I say, yes, great-grandmother Golda, I am fluent in toki pona. And because this happened last time, please don't go into the comments demanding that I describe highly technical topics in toki pona for you. These videos take enough labor to make in the first place. Actually, you know what? I'll make a follow-up video where I talk about the concepts that you think I can't. So never mind, please do go in the comments demanding that I describe highly technical topics in toki pona. Voila! So let's sum up everything here. Why is toki pona so hard to use? It's because every single person who learns it is used to relying, to a degree, on a robust lexicon to disambiguate vague concepts, and toki pona does not allow this method at all. Toki pona is still as productive as any other human language, and there's no topic it can't cover. But unless you learn to rely entirely on context for disambiguation, you'll never get to that level of proficiency. Now let's talk about rebuttals to my previous video. Most of these focus on my claim that toki pona is capable of anything any other language is. I'll start with the ones that are simplest to disagree with. The most common by far was, oh, toki pona can do anything? Explain this specific chemical reaction in toki pona. Variations include other technical topics. This one is interesting for me because people expect me to be able to describe things in toki pona that I wouldn't be able to describe in English. In a way, talking about technical stuff in toki pona is like teaching technical stuff to a child. You have to understand the thing you're talking about from the ground up. You need to understand it well. The main disadvantage to this is that I can't talk about quantum mechanics because I do not know how they work well enough. But this is secretly a good thing in my opinion. If I try to talk about quantum mechanics, it will become clear very quickly that I do not know what I am talking about. Tokipona has built-in checks for understanding, so my inability to talk about specific highly technical topics is due to my lack of understanding of them, not due to a lack of Tokipona skill. Or I guess maybe it's due to a lack of energy? Like, I do not owe anyone a full Tokipona translation of their favorite jargon-heavy concept. The next rebuttal is that it takes way more time to talk about complex things in Tokipona than it does in other languages. And I don't think this is true. While you can't write a meaningless pop science book filled with buzzwords in Tokipona for a general population, you can write a technical book that either builds from the ground up or is for a technical audience. And either way, this would likely be about the same length as an English book. The only thing that changes is structure. Some people pointed out specific lexical quirks of Tokipona, like how the concepts for non-binary and transsexual are both covered by the same word, and suggested that it would be impossible to distinguish between these concepts in Tokipona. But it isn't. You can describe the act of medical transition easily. You can describe the state of not being a man or a woman. In cases where someone is only non-binary or only transsexual, it is entirely possible to explain what is going on, and it should be noted that there is considerable overlap between those two groups. Like, I have a lot of friends who are non-binary, have had top surgery, but have not gone on hormones. The idea that Tokipona can't distinguish between this diversity is incorrect. Another rebuttal I got more than once, and have gotten multiple times in the past before I made videos about this topic at all, is the concept that Tokipona relies on pictures too much to talk about complex concepts. I want to push back on the... it fell over. Okay, hold on. I want to push back on this. Remember what I said before about Tokipona being like teaching to a child? Forget the child part. Talking about something when the person you're talking to doesn't know about the topic is equivalent to teaching that topic to the person when you're using Tokipona. I don't remember a single teacher I've ever had who never used visuals to teach. If two professional neuroscientists who were very proficient in Tokipona were discussing neuroscience, I don't think they'd need pictures to chat among themselves. But if one of them was talking to me about neuroscience, they probably would. I think we need to normalize using pictures more in other languages. Like, legit, I think a lot of conversations we have would improve significantly if we all carried whiteboards around with us to draw our thoughts. I can't count on my fingers how many times I've steered a friend into an empty classroom with a whiteboard to talk to them about something while drawing things when using English. Tokipona does nothing but encourage this model of communication, which is no less noble than any other mode of communication. All this said, you can still talk about things without pictures. It won't always be successful unless both parties involved are very proficient, but you can still do it. It may just be hard. It's cases like these that I recommend thinking hard about prior knowledge specifically. Maybe the person you're talking to already knows a little bit about calculus. Maybe they don't, and you have to explain the basics. The most solid rebuttal that I've gotten is that in order for Tokipona to be truly as capable as other languages, it needs to be able to reach the same level of detail as any other language without straining the short-term memory of the listener or reader. I still don't think this is very convincing, though. I'll start off by saying that I don't think Tokipona can do this, but I don't agree that that makes it any less capable or usable than any other language. A lot of the more specific information present in a Tokipona conversation is relegated to context instead of lexicon. This contributes to the level of detail in a very interesting way, and it's really hard to master this. I'm not convinced anyone has, but I know a few people who have come close. Ultimately, this argument itself doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the self-importance behind it, and so many arguments. It turns out that this is a little subjective. Of course, the experience of a beginner Tokipona speaker or some random Esperantist is bound to be less useful than a Tokiponist. But there are things Tokipona can't do without becoming a different language. Tokipona in fact cannot have thousands of words in its lexicon without becoming a new language. Tokipona cannot have embedded clauses. But none of these things restrict what you can talk about and how in-depth these conversations can go. Have something else to say that I haven't mentioned? Leave it in the comments. And keep in mind that there are very few studies on Tokipona, and they all seem to be made by this one Italian professor in Malaysia and have really small sample sizes. They're interesting, but none of them are related strictly to the topic of this video, so this video is technically speculation. But I think my speculation is built on some solid concepts and the experiences of a lot of Tokiponists, so do not take it with a grain of salt. I think my speculation is very valuable here. Eat a good fish. And by fish, of course, I mean gefilte fish. And by mean, of course, I mean just for this video. For context, I end all my videos by saying eat a good fish. And for clarity, I'm not usually thinking specifically about gefilte fish. And when I apply that gefilte fish is good here, I want to be clear that this meaning of good is vague. Store-bought gefilte fish is objectively terrible, but subjectively, I really like it. Okay, that's enough context for you.